Welcome back to the eSports Report. I'm officially better than Benson at predicting brackets. Just want to remind Benson that real quick. Benson, not as good. Anyway, it's time to get into some interesting facts. Here, bringing all of the action, we got PJ from COD the man behind all of the stats madness. PJ, welcome to the eSports Report. How you doing today? That good, huh? Really? So what's it been like? Oh, yeah? I'm having a fake conversation with myself while Ron is getting PJ on the Skype telephone. So, what are you guys doing today besides watching eSports Report? I got a bunch of your tweets. Let's go through some of them. I asked you, will Cole be able to dominate Call of Duty for the remainder of this year? We got X Games. We got Anaheim coming up. I had Zorak #collapse saying that they're not going to do it. Rex Rower says Cole will win X Games. That's Draxic on Twitter. Vanta Plexi, he's a big fan, I believe, of Vex, it looks like, and he says, no way Cole is staying perfect. It's impossible. I mean, statistically, I think I can definitely agree with that. Very tough odds there. And Aesthetic Skills says, yeah, because whenever they go to Game 5, they get pissed. And Krim isn't human. Two great reasons there, Aesthetic Kill. I might not disagree with you. I think Cole's staying perfect this year. Vulnerable, but perfect. Now it's time to bring PJ on. He is ready. It's time for some Skype action. PJ, can you hear me this time?
Yes, I can hear you, Puckett. How you doing today?
I am awesome. And where are you at right now? I like the studio you're in.
I'm actually in the COD eSports TV studio. We've actually put it together in the last couple months, and we're trying to bring as much video content as we can to the Call of Duty community, Puckett.
Well, I love it. Never enough video content out there. PJ, I'm told you have some interesting stats for us today. Of course, we see all of the action as the games are played, but there's some numbers behind all of this that add up to some pretty interesting things. Let's start it off with some of your interesting stats, starting off with who was the best organization competing. Of course, we saw Optic Gaming with 2 teams. We saw Clover Fuse send a few teams through. And, of course, FaZe had 2 teams competing.
Yeah, Puckett. Well, thanks to the team over at CET Stats, we actually put together some of the stats from the event, tracked some of the top teams. And like you said, you have Optic that has 2 teams. You have FaZe that has 2 teams. I mean, so far, though, well, Curse as well. So far, FaZe has actually got the most bang for their buck when it comes to the teams. If you actually look at the stats, you have FaZe Black, who actually has a 1.05 kill-to-death ratio. They have 9.25 blitz caps on average per game. They have 18.86 domination caps on average, and their search and destroy kill-to-death ratio is about 1.08. Then, if you look at the brother team, FaZe Red, you can see that they're rocking a 1.07 kill-to-death ratio, 9 blitz caps on average per game, about 17.75 dom caps, and their search and destroy kill-to-death ratio is actually 0.82. Now, the interesting thing is when you actually combine these 2 teams together and you average their stats out total, the combined totals for the event would be FaZe, the whole organization, would be rocking a 1.06 kill-to-death ratio, Puckett, a 9.5 blitz caps per game on average, 18.30 domination caps per game on average, and a 0.95 search and destroy kill-to-death ratio. And if you compare that with the other teams that competed, Optic and Curse, so far FaZe is just on top, and like I said, they're getting the most bang for their buck out of that organization right now.
Now, we did see FaZe Black actually go farther than FaZe Red in the tournament, and it's pretty interesting to see that it came probably from those Game 5s, those KDs, the difference in search and destroy. I think it's pretty safe to say that's where they were head and shoulders above, because dom caps, I mean, it was about 1 point difference there. Blitz caps almost equal, and their KD overall, FaZe Red actually with the better KD. So that search and destroy game, pretty important to these teams. Now, my question is, who is the best search team? Because we saw Complexity with a lot of dominating 6-1s, but they're also taking around 11 a few times. Envy, they went to Game 5 so many times throughout this tournament, especially that winner's bracket, winning all of their Game 5s. Who is the best S&D team this past weekend at UGC Niagara?
Well, actually, that might actually surprise a couple people about who actually was the best this week. And it turns out Optic Gaming had the overall highest kill-to-death ratio in Search and Destroy with a 1.28. I mean, clearly they were leading the pack when it came to Search and Destroy this game. And it's an interesting change, and you got to wonder how much proof he actually helped that transition and helped pick up the search and destroy game type, Puckett.
Really interesting. As you said, Proofy being added to this lineup instead of Embos. Nade Shot and Clayster, you know what you're going to get from them in S&D, but Proofy and Scumpy really taking it to another level this past weekend. This Optic Gaming squad, if it gets to Game 5, they're the best team in the game according to their KDs. The question is, will they get to Game 5? You saw the 3-0 from Complexity. They also struggled in the winner's bracket. So if you're Optic Gaming right now, you know you have the best KD. What advice would you give to that squad as a team manager?
Well, I'd just tell them to work on some of their other game types and tighten it up. Don't get discouraged because of the lower placing that they expect at the event, and just work on the chemistry and start building it up. If you actually look at the stats on CETV stats, you can actually see how they stacked up in some of the other categories. And overall, their kill to death ratio was about a 1.5, which put them in about 5th place overall out of all the teams that competed, which is a good start. So with this new roster, Puckett, I mean, the team's looking good, and I'd just tell them to keep what they're doing and keep on the grind, and hopefully it will start coming, and those places will advance better.
I like it. Well, let's talk about that top 5, actually. If Optic's in the top 5, who are the other 4 teams ahead of them?
It would actually be Complexity is first with a 1.15 kill to death ratio overall.
1.15.
Yes,
so you go up against Complexity, expect to lose about 6 out of your 10 fights.
And then it's also very interesting because if you actually look at the other leaderboards that CTV stats track, that's actually the only one that Complexity was in first in. So if you look at the other stats, their kill to death ratios really has to be helping them pull through these games, Puckett.
I like it. Now, who are the other 3 teams chasing Complexity?
The other 3 teams would have to be FaZe Red, which had, like we said earlier, the 1.07. Then interesting would be Team Caliber, who you spoke about earlier. They actually had a 1.06 overall, followed up by FaZe Black in 4th with a 1.05. And then, like we said before, you have 5th would be Optic Gaming with their 1.05.
All right, looking at it on paper, it seems to make a lot of sense there. Team Caliber, a little bit surprising for me. I actually did not expect them to be above Optic Gaming and overall KD. Well, that does it for the teams, but let's talk players. Now, who are some of the players that people might be surprised to see at the top of the leaderboard when it comes to stats?
Well, if you look at our Slayer category, which tracks about the average kills the player actually gets during a match, and thanks once again to the guys at CET Stats, I mean, you have to look at John, who actually really stood out in this event, actually coming in 2nd on the Slayer leaderboards with a 2.79. I mean, to me, that's personally very impressive considering that John hasn't really had the best opportunities so far, and with Strictly Business being his recent team, it's very impressive to see him up there as one of the top Slayers currently in the game coming out of UGC Niagara.
27.9 kills on average per respawn game mode. So, John, the little guy from Strictly Business. Now, when he was playing with Denial East, I saw him back last UMG Philly or whatever. I think they were just straight up Denial at that point. Either way, he was crushing. He was throwing about 31 kills, every Sovereign domination I'd see. And if it was on Strike Zone, he was anywhere between 35 and 40. The kid is a monster, and Strictly Business finishing top 6 this week, and I think a little bit surprising for some of the people out there. Well, PJ, that's all I got on our script. Any other big stats you want to throw out here from COD-esports.tv?
I'd like to actually point out that sometimes stats really, you don't have to be the best statistically to be one of the top teams in this game. I mean, I'd have to give a real big shout out to Vex Gaming, who actually finished 3rd in the event, and considering that they didn't place top 5 on any of the leaderboards we tracked. I mean, across the board, their stats were average. It wasn't nothing really great. I believe their top placing was around 8th on one of our leaderboards, but that goes to show you that sometimes as long as you're making the right plays, the numbers really don't matter, Puckett.
I like it. So Vex Gaming doing it. Doesn't have to be pretty, but they're doing it well. I also see one more note here on Team Caliber. They didn't have the best performance of the event, but they had the highest KD ratio average in Blitz. So What do you think made Team Caliber such a good Blitz squad?
Well, it's hard to say. It might have just been one of those modes where it just clicked for them and they were clicking on our gears, or it might have been the pickup of Mad Cat. But currently right now, what they really have to work on if I was Team Caliber would be their search and destroy. And right now that was actually kind of low, and their kill to death ratio was like only 0.64 in kill or search and destroy. Now, we have to remember that Madcap was substituting in for the team during this event. It's going to be interesting, Puckett, to see how apathy actually helps the team out when they have their full roster compete moving forward.
Very interesting. Now, before you guys get all over Twitter, I want to know, what is your take on best game mode to play with a substitute? If you're playing with a brand new teammate, would you rather have them for domination? Would you rather have them for blitz? Would you rather have them for S&D? Because we always see kind of in these S&D tournaments, lots of random teams being formed of just top pro players. And it's interesting to see the struggle from TK at just 0.64 KD versus FaZe Black, who also played with the fill-in. And FaZe Black was able to go 1.08 KD overall. So by the numbers, it's a little interesting. You can tell stories in both directions.
Yeah, personally, I've always been under the impression, Puckett, that Search and Destroy wins championships. I mean, you can't really deny that it comes down to a tie. We know we're going to be playing Search. So if you don't have a strong Search game moving forward in Call of Duty, it's actually really going to hurt you. And you gotta be clicking on all cylinders when it comes to Search, Puckett.
I love it. Well, PJ, thank you so much for coming on this show. I know I'm going to be working with your team overnight. We're going to be picking out some MVPs from UGC Niagara, identifying the top 5 players coming out of this weekend's event. PJ, where can people catch you and all the work that your team does?
Well, if you're looking for our video coverage, you can actually go to the website over at codesports.tv. And if you're looking for stats, we actually launched a new platform over at COD Stat, no S on the end, just codstat.us, and you can actually check out all the statistics coming up from the events and the past events. We've actually been going through with the team and going back to some of the events before we actually got started, and we've been doing throwback events like last year's championship, where you can check out to see how these players actually competed last year. You can also follow the stats for stat team update or stat update from the team over at CETV Stats. And then if you're looking for our main coverage, which features news, videos, and pretty much the lead and video content from the community right now, be sure to give us a follow over at COD Esports TV. And that's how you stay up to date with us, Puckett.
All right, PJ, thank you for everything. I love what you and crew do. I use your stats and numbers every day right here on the Esports Report. Big shout out to ESN today as well for all of their UGC Niagara coverage, helping prep this show. Always easier with our partners. Guys, thank you for tuning into the Esports Report today. For a beautiful Monday, go out and enjoy your Cinco de Mayo. Drink some tequila for me. I'll see you tomorrow right here, 4 o'clock. Fwiz will be co-hosting the Esports Report with me tomorrow.